Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Cultural Differences with the Asian Real Estate Association of America with Vanessa Shields, Deputy Director. Also, be sure to register for tomorrow's Cultural Difference webinar featuring the California Association of Real Estate Broker. To register, please go to nsdcar.com/webinar. Now we'll get started with Vanessa Shields. All right, Vanessa, you're on.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Shirley, and thank you, North San Diego County Association of Realtors, for inviting Aria to share a report on the state of Asia America. I'm excited to have you all with me today. Just keep in mind that I'm sharing my presentation, so if you have any questions, please use the Q&A function, not the chat, and I will try to get to those as soon as possible. Obviously, in this type of format, I'm not able to see you, but I feel compelled to, ask questions. And so if you have any questions, please go ahead and ask. So in terms of who I am, yeah, I'm the Deputy Director at ARIA, Asian Real Estate Association of America. Believe it or not, we're actually headquartered in San Diego. So I live in San Diego. We are a national trade organization with 41 chapters, including 2 in Canada. So we have incredible real estate agents and mortgage lenders all throughout the country. So towards the end of my presentation today, I'll get into a little bit more about ARIA and how you can get in contact with me if you have any other specific questions after the presentation. But just in terms of San Diego, again, live in San Diego. I'm a San Diego native, and so I'm very excited to share more about the state of Asia America and some specifics around San Diego that I think and hope you will find interesting today. So the State of Asia America report is something that we publish every year. This year, we had a great report that we worked with, and every year we work with our 2 partners, which is RE/MAX and Freddie Mac. Freddie Mac is incredible because they have so much data that they pull, not just from the census, but from their own resources that have really contributed to how we approach the report this year. I highly encourage you to download it when you have a second. I'm going to share some of the pages from it, but not everything. And there's a lot of rich data for you to better understand Asian Americans when it comes to home ownership. One thing that we added this year that we never had before was a really great historical timeline, which covered kind of the overall sorry, I'm going to close my window. The overall perspective of Asian Americans in this country, starting as early as the 1700s, where you can kind of understand when and why Asian Americans were coming to the United States and where they were settling. In the timeline, you also see kind of the policies and laws that have either, helped Asian Americans become homeowners or maybe prevented them from becoming homeowners. So that was one thing I think that's really great in the report this year. The second thing in the report is just the whole disaggregated data in terms of the regional landscape of this country. You'll be able to see kind of take a look at the country more in regions and have a broader understanding of where Asian Americans are moving, specific cities, which type of Asian American are moving to these cities, and maybe why, whether it's for economic reasons or job opportunities. So that's great information as well. But let's get to what's going to be covered today. We do have an hour scheduled. I'm hoping I can take as much of that time as possible to share with you the insights here we have at ARIA, but also if we have time for Q&A at the end, that would be fantastic. The first thing that we're going to be covering is where we are with AAPI homeownership. Believe it or not, Q2 we had the highest amount reported in the Census Homeownership Report with Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders at 61.4%. This was a huge milestone for ARIA, as Asian American homeownership is something that we it's in our mission statement. So I'm going to really get into in this presentation kind of what that 61% entails, and kind of when you look at it more and disaggregated data, what you'll see with Asian Americans. The second is understanding cultural differences. You'll get a lot of this throughout the presentation, not just understanding the differences in homeownership, but I'm really going to kind of even show examples in San Diego on how you can really find out more and learn more about Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. Third, we're going to cover barriers to homeownership. These are things that obviously impact Asian Americans heavily, but things that you're probably already familiar with in regards to living in a more costly area like Southern California. And then lastly, we're going to cover solutions for AAPI homeownership. And what I really want to have this time lead to in terms of what you get out of it is just kind of understanding. I'm not sure if you're already working with Asian American clients or if you want to work with more Asian American and Pacific Islander clients, but I hope by the end of this hour, you really have a broader understanding of what that looks like, what opportunities there are for you, and maybe kind of how you can approach it. So excited to get into it. All right, so here we have 4 maps of Asian American and Pacific Islanders, kind of where folks are coming from. And this is such a broad term. I'm going to use the term AAPIs to describe this group, Asian American and Pacific Islanders, but you can see from these 4 maps, this covers a lot of ground. You have East Asia, which I think traditionally folks think of when they think of Asia. They think of China, Japan, Korea. Here in East Asia, there's also Taiwan, which represents a very important data, which we'll get into. You also have Southeast Asia. Obviously, being in San Diego, we have a ton of Southeast Asians, including some of my family background being from the Philippines. We have a very large Southeast Asian population in San Diego, so we'll get into kind of what that looks like. South Asian is also considered within the AAPI segment. India obviously dominates that, but then you have other countries that are represented in the South Asian identity. And then you have Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islanders, which I think people, still are kind of like, what does that mean? Obviously, we have Hawaii within the United States, but within Hawaii, we have a lot of Native Hawaiians that are considered Polynesians. We also have, a large representation of Pacific Islanders within San Diego. And so we'll talk a little bit more about some of their, some of their numbers when it comes to home ownership. Okay, so this is a page actually from the report this year, and I love charts like this because they really kind of showcase what things look like visually. I'm a visual person myself, so this is very helpful for me when I'm thinking about scale of things. So within the US total population, and this is from 2018, so keep that in mind. We just had a census this year, and so these numbers are obviously changing. We'll have more information from the census towards the end of 2021, but let's look at kind of where they are, or have been currently. Within the US total population, we have 18,415,198 Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. So when you break that number down, really the largest group is East Asian. And you'll see here in the blue, East Asian represents 6.6 million, which is very large. And so those are 4 subgroups within that category that really are large, Chinese being the largest of all with 4,217,892. So Chinese definitely represents a large amount of the Asian American and Pacific Islander population within the United States. But I just want you to see kind of in perspective, Korean would follow that number as far as the East Asian category. And then next, we're going to jump to the red circles, which are Southeast Asians at 6 million. This is also a very large number with 6 million. But when you look at the Southeast Asian colors, the red colors, there's actually double the amount as East Asian. You have many more countries represented in a much more complex disparate understanding of population. So obviously Filipino, one of the largest Southeast Asian communities in the United States at 2.9 million, followed by Vietnamese at 1.8. And then you have this much smaller representations starting with, Hmong, which is a very incredible, you know, population. They don't necessarily have a national identity and live between Thailand and Laos. But, you know, we have a good amount of Hmong residents within San Diego, but we'll talk about kind of the other areas that you'll find the Hmong population, not just in California, but within the nation. And then third, actually, South Asian, which I talked about recently. Asian Indian represents the majority of these green spheres, with 4.1 million Asian Indians in the United States. That just comes right after Chinese in terms of the second highest population we have here in the United States. And then we also have, you know, within South Asian, Bangladeshi, Pakistani, and Nepalese. And then lastly, our gold yellow circles here at the bottom are Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders, representing 626,054 within the population of the United States. And obviously, going back to the maps I showed earlier, you know, this is very much in correlation in terms of the size of the countries of origin, and also, you know, I definitely encourage you to reference our State of Asia America report to kind of understand the cycles in which Asian Americans came to the United States, what's allowed them to come to the United States, and what's kind of happened since some of these subgroups have been here. But once we do a deeper dive into the subgroups, when it comes to median household income, you know, we can kind of understand that things become a little bit more diverse. So I mentioned before that we are at 6.1% with homeownership currently. Income obviously is the most important thing to kind of consider when it comes to homeownership, and how and why and where people decide to live. So you'll look here, we've indicated on the black bars the national averages. The one right in the middle, we have white Caucasian Americans. The national average is 61,937. But when you look all the way to the right, the very last bar, you have Asian Indians with a national median household income of 119,858. That is very, very large, followed directly after Taiwanese. So they definitely represent the higher end of the household income. But then you go all the way to the left side of this graph and you see Burmese with 45,348. And so I think that just shows a really large spectrum of income within this community, and kind of, hopefully allows you to understand, you know, the differences, because I think that there's this, you know, idea that all Asians are crazy rich based off of the movie that came out last couple of years. And that's just definitely not the case. Asian Americans, you know, obviously have their own sets of identities and own sets of struggles. So I think when kind of looking at things in this way, you're able to really see where homeownership opportunities really lie. Okay, moving on to national AAPI, median house value. You know, this is really interesting also because you have certain groups that live in really high cost area. And so obviously being in San Diego, North County specifically, you know, we're in a very high cost area. And so you really have to take that into consideration when you're looking at this median house value, because obviously, looking this time at the very left with Burmese at 168,900, you know, this necessarily doesn't exist in San Diego. You have parts of California like, you know, Central Valley, Fresno, where you'll actually find a lot more Hmong, Laotian, Southeast Asian residents living there because of the more affordable cost of living, versus where you're seeing maybe Polynesian or Hawaiian kind of more in the middle of this graph. They're living in more likely higher cost areas like San Diego. And so in that regard, you know, you have to kind of consider what that median house value looks at. But in general, Asian population is skewing closer to the higher end of this graph, with Taiwanese actually with the largest median house value, which is 631,200. Okay, and this is the last of the graph, and these are all pulled from that original group that you saw with the circles, we kind of just wanted to look at them each individually with home ownership rate. I mentioned that we are now at 61%. The national average is 63.9. So we're getting closer. We're not quite there yet. White, non-Hispanic whites actually lead with 69.6%. And directly after that is Taiwanese with 68.1%. And so in terms of, you know, homeownership rate, that's a 38.7% difference between Taiwanese Americans who have the highest homeownership rate and Micronesian Americans who have a homeownership rate of just 29.4%. So it's again, you know, a very diverse and disparate view of Asian American and Pacific Islanders when it comes to homeownership percent. You know, we have a few groups really leading the higher end when it comes to population, but then we also have a lot of other Asian American and Pacific Islanders who still are in need of homeownership. So I hope that this kind of sheds light for you when it comes to understanding what those rates really are and what they mean. Okay, so let's get into San Diego. The metropolitan statistical areas are obviously really important when we're looking at the AAPI population. But San Diego, here we are. San Diego Carlsbad MSA is actually number 11, which is huge. You know, this presents a really big opportunity for you as agents to work with the Asian American and Pacific Islander community. And so I want to congratulate you for being here today to take advantage of this information and to kind of have a better understanding of what that looks like. So yeah, again, number 11 in top 20 areas. You'll see New York being number 1. Lastly, and this is Detroit. And we have ARIA chapters basically in every one of these areas in the country. And so later on in the conversation, when we talk about ARIA, you know, we're really fortunate that we can communicate with other ARIA chapters regarding what they're seeing. You know, and I think that becomes really helpful for our agents who are ARIA members, because maybe they have a client that's moving to another part of the country, you know, or maybe they have some that are wanting to move to San Diego. You know, it's really helpful within ARIA to kind of have this understanding of where people are moving and what opportunities are there for agents, regardless if you live in San Diego or not. All right, so this is probably one of my favorite times in the presentation to talk about San Diego and kind of what is out there. I'm a big arts and culture person, and so I think maybe there's still some information out there that I'm not aware of, and I'd love to hear from you. I was raised in San Diego again, and I live more in, you know, closer to downtown, I would say, but to venture down in San Diego, even during COVID, I think it's still possible to enjoy some of the resources that we have here in San Diego for the Asian American and Pacific Islander community. And so just talking about what that means, you know, we have so much here, really, you know, with museums. Even if you go to Balboa Park regularly, there's a few museums here that really kind of include the Asian American and Pacific Islander experience, one of them being the San Diego History Museum. The Mingei, actually, which is under restoration, is really a great resource for Japanese culture. There's also the Japanese Garden in Balboa Park, which is an incredible resource in understanding philosophies and aesthetics when it comes to the Japanese. You know, we have in San Diego festivals, an incredible festival once a year. It did not happen live this year, but I've gone, you know, I think the last 6 years, is the Pacific Islander Festival. And I was just telling Shirley before this presentation that, you know, Pacific Islanders represent, you know, a large population just here in San Diego. I think we have the second largest Samoan population within the United States. And so when you go to PIFA, which is the Pacific Islander Festival Association in Ski Beach once a year, you really see this dynamic community come together. All the islands, you know, across across the Pacific, Micronesian, Polynesian, Guamanian, even Filipinos who are considered Pacific Islanders in Hawaii. They come together, they celebrate with dancing, with food, with just their culture. And I think that those riches are something that's very specific to San Diego. So I encourage you to check that out. We also have a dominant Filipino population here with a lot of businesses, predominantly in Mira Mesa. If you venture all the way down to National City, even Chula Vista, you'll find incredible restaurants, incredible resources for understanding the Filipino population even better. Speaking of food, something I love, to do is just cook. And San Diego is just an incredible resource when it comes to cooking Asian American Pacific Islander food. We have incredible grocery stores. And, I think even walking in a Ranch 99, and we have a few, one of them, a few in Claremont, you really start to understand, what's the differences between Chinese when you're in a Ranch 99 versus going to a Mitsuya restaurant, maybe in, grocery store in Claremont. We also have, massive Korean grocery stores, Vietnamese grocery stores in Linda Vista and City Heights, and these are areas where we can really learn about the culture of Asian Americans and the differences when it comes to food. Speaking of food, again, we have great libraries that reside in some of these communities like Linda Vista, where you can actually check out cookbooks, cookbooks to kind of learn and understand histories for the Asian American Pacific Islander cultures. And so I really encourage you to take advantage of what everything San Diego has to offer. We have the Pacific Arts Film Festival, not during COVID, unfortunately, but normally every other year, where we have, incredible folks coming to San Diego to showcase their films who are of Pacific Asian American background. So excited obviously about this. If you have any other questions or suggestions, please share them. Let's see here. So this is a little bit more serious. We're going to get into barriers to homeownership because obviously, as I mentioned before, with the homeownership rate being 61% for the overall Asian American and Pacific Islanders, we really have to look at some of those other communities and kind of what's preventing them from being homeowners. And I think this is great. Maybe some of you aren't yet working with Asian Americans or Pacific Islanders. Maybe you are. Maybe you have friends or relatives with children or young adults who are considering homeownership in San Diego, but they don't really know how to approach it. And so I think this will be really helpful for you to understand why it's not as easy for them to become homeowners. And so we'll get into the idea of affordable housing. We'll get into down payment actually when it comes to affordable housing. And then we're going to talk about thin credit files, which is obviously something you may or may not understand when it comes to Asian Americans and their and how they approach spending. So for barriers to homeownership and down payment, this chart exists in our State of Asia America report, and I think it's a really, really important small chart that kind of helps you understand where AAPIs are in respect to the other communities. Here, just at the very bottom, you'll see AAPI, and you'll see with 20% down, the number 24.6, and so that's a largest of all the four ethnicities shown, but when you look at their monthly net income, although it's very, very high at 4,306, which is much larger than the other groups, when you look at the median house price, it's actually the largest, which means that it requires them to save much longer, especially when Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders are often in higher cost areas like San Diego. So, you'll find that that's something that becomes a challenge for AAPIs because they're choosing, areas like San Diego, which maybe you know, they traditionally have lived here, their parents have lived here, they have family support when it comes to raising their children. Maybe they're living in San Diego because of, other economic reasons like the jobs that they can have. Those are all factors as to why they're living here. But in order for them to not just live here, but become homeowners, we need to kind of consider the barrier for them kind of saving for that 20% down payment. And so, I have just a couple of notes when it comes to this. Obviously, with FHA loans, I'm sure many of you have been involved with competing for inventory in this market. FHA loans are seen to be more complicated for an application process. So acceptance of this type of financial product in this kind of competitive market is usually very difficult. So, I just want to mention that because, APIs don't normally go for FHA loans. They tend to go through the 20% down methods when it comes to homeownership. So that's why there needs to be kind of more education around that option. Okay, let me try to see if I can answer some of these questions and take a break here. We do have a couple. One, thank you very much. What are Asian Americans looking for in their home requirements that may be different than other cultures? Okay, I'm going to wait till the end to answer that one. And then do you have a chart with the different ages entering the market, like Gen X, millennials, etc.? These are both incredible questions, and oops, and I just stopped sharing my slides that I do want to get into, and I will get into, and things that we actually talk about a lot here at ARIA. So I will cover that. And thank you for posing those questions. So next with, there we go, barriers to homeownership. We're going to talk about thin, clean credit files. And so this very simple chart kind of showing the different applicants when it comes to Asian, Black, Hispanic, non-Hispanic, white, and other minority. You can kind of tell right from the beginning, DTIs, debt to income for Asian Americans, is actually fairly high. But after that, when we look at the credit files for Asian Americans, you're actually seeing that, sorry, I just had a thought. So while they do have credit scores, Asian borrowers have the highest median credit scores overall and across most enhanced loan types. However, because API families prefer to make their purchases in cash at the time of purchase and avoid debt, only making large purchases when cash is available, APIs have historically struggled with credit qualification as a result of limited credit history. And so the research I mentioned earlier from Freddie Mac found that in 2018, 0.8 million additional APIs met their research criteria for mortgage readiness, but were disqualified due to thin, clean credit files, meaning they had no delinquencies, but simply not enough credit history established to generate a score. So with more education and alternative credit, which I will be getting into scoring, we could potentially open up housing access even further for this community. So those are really the two barriers. But now let's get into some solutions to homeownership and kind of how, what really exists right now that we can kind of use and take advantage when we're working with Asian American Pacific Islander potential homeowners. One of them being accessory dwelling units, which is a fascinating and a very trendy, I think, concept that's come up a lot, specifically in San Diego. Two, I want to bring up the multi-generational household, which is something very specific to Asian American and Pacific Islanders. And then lastly, something that's happened in the last year, which are FHA mortgage translations into many of the Asian languages. So we will start first with accessory dwelling units. And so I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with ADUs. Freddie Mac actually did a really great report in the last few months where they researched ADUs across the country, and they had to do some data mining because as you'll know, probably by being on the MLS, you'll see ADUs spoken about in many different ways. People are calling them in-law apartments, guest houses, carriage houses. You'll see here on this graphic, I mean, there's a million ways, not a million, but maybe 100+ ways of calling an ADU an ADU. So That was a little complicated, but what they did realize when doing this research is that ADUs have made a huge jump. I think they've grown fourfold since 2000. I think, and that corresponds to how expensive homes have become, particularly in San Diego. And when you look at this, you kind of understand how ADUs have been used as another way of taking care of the mortgage. With mortgage cost increasing, ADUs allow you to have that extra income. But this has been really the case also, and very popular for Asian American and Pacific Islanders who are living, who are wanting to be homeowners. Maybe they're able to, buy a home with an ADU and get that extra income to help take care of their mortgage payment. And the other reason ADUs work well for Asian American and Pacific Islanders is because of the multi-generational household. And so you have many subgroups, and I know, this is the case for myself on my Filipino side. We have I have many cousins who live with their parents, and then they're also their children. So you have these large families that are living together. I have friends from high school. One of my dearest friends, who's Laos, and she lives in Temecula. She was raised in Linda Vista, but her family moved up to Temecula because they were able to, buy a much larger home. But with a much larger home, they were able to combine a lot of income. And so you have siblings that are living in the home. And this is really interesting because we did some research in our State of Asia America report, and AAPIs are more likely to have 3+ co-borrowers than any other race ethnicity when it comes to their loans, and 29% live in multi-generational households. And actually in 2019, 16% purchased a multi-generational home. So this is something that, a very creative approach. Some families might already be considering this when they're going into the homeownership process. Some of them might not, but it's definitely a solution, and one that we see becoming more and more popular for Asian American and Pacific Islander families. Okay, and then last solution I have here is the FHFA Mortgage Translation. And so this is really exciting. ARIA, every year, ARIA in May, we go to DC, we take a group of our leaders. It's a great experience for those who are in ARIA. Some of them have been there many times, some go for the first time each year. But similar to NAR, we go, to lobby for what matters. And we have a 3-point plan every year that we take with us, and we talk to our representatives about. And something that ARIA has been championing in our policy points for the last few years is language access. Obviously, within the Asian American and Pacific Islander community, there's a lot of limited English proficiency clients. A lot of them, have the ability to pay for a home. They have the down payment money. They're ready to do it, but they don't really have the language skills needed to work through a transaction. And so, language becomes, a key factor in who they decide to work with and how they approach the process of buying a home. And so, with FHFA, ARIA is very excited to share that in the last year, we've seen 4 major mortgage translations happen. They started off with Spanish last year, that quickly followed with Chinese. So you'll see Mandarin available on their website. I have the link down at the very bottom. And then earlier this year, they introduced Vietnamese, which was incredible. And then in the last couple of months, we just saw Korean and Tagalog show up. And, obviously with California becoming more and more diverse, this is an incredible resource when it comes to approaching, new homeowners. Maybe they do feel comfortable with English, but maybe there's some terms, and I know this is the case for even somebody like myself who's a, native English speaker. Mortgage terms are very hard to understand even in English if you speak English, as your main language. But when it comes to you know, having a resource like this, which is a glossary of terms, you know, it just really helps make the transaction much more seamless. We have members within ARIA that have been translators for their parents from such a young age. And so maybe they understand what words mean, but they don't really understand the financial implications of a mortgage. So again, this is something that we find to be very, very helpful. And I encourage you to check it out. Go to the website, see what translations are available. And lastly, you know, the solution that I really want to get into for Asian American homeownership is just ARIA. ARIA is fantastic. I'm not sure if any of you have checked out an ARIA event in San Diego, but we have a chapter here in San Diego. A lot of the members actually live, I think, more in North County. So obviously during COVID, there's not a lot of opportunities for us to see each other face to face, but we're still throwing incredible events, and there's still ways of connecting for resources, for referrals. So I encourage you to go to ARIA's website, and we'll get into that after I show this video. But I wanted to show this video because it's really something we recently debuted at our national convention a couple weeks ago, but it tells the story of ARIA members throughout the country. I think you'll be able to match people's stories with some of the things I've shared today in regards to the differences, the backgrounds, the rich diversity that we have in the Asian American and Pacific Islander community. So just after I show this video, which I'm really excited to share, we'll get into a little bit more about ARIA, and I can answer some of those questions that I saw in the chat. Thank you.
What's going on, ARIA? Dan King here out of the Houston chapter.
Hi, this is Lori with ARIA Austin chapter.
Coming to you from Washington, D.C.
From Livermore Wine Country in California.
Founder of ARIA Greater Phoenix.
And from the island of Maui.
North Los Angeles.
In Vancouver, Canada.
I am a luxury realtor here in Newport Beach
in Northern California.
I was asked to help to open the Miami chapter.
We're part of the ARIA Houston chapter.
From ARIA North Los Angeles chapter.
And I'm doing this video today as part of the 100 Voices campaign, so all of us can share our personal story with you.
I'm here to share my journey.
My ARIA story.
Here to tell you my ARIA story.
My story.
My ARIA story.
We all have a story. The experience of my childhood has shaped who I am today.
I would like to share with you what ARIA meant to me when I first found out about this professional organization. You see, in 2015, I lost my husband of 23 years. When he passed away, I could not, and he would not leave the house.
My family fled Vietnam during the 1978 mass exodus in Vietnam.
My parents are both Japanese Americans, and during World War II, unfortunately, they were put in relocation camps.
Going back to 1981, when my parents immigrated to Honolulu, Hawaii.
My family was one of the Vietnamese boat people. My parents secretly organized an escape plan.
When my family arrived in Sacramento, California, strangers walked by and overheard of our conversation in Cantonese and would shout, "Ching Chong," and yell, "Speak English."
Growing up in Alabama and also doing real estate in Alabama, there's not a lot of people that look like me.
It wasn't until I left the islands for a short time and we lived in College Station, Texas, when it became very apparent to me that there was discrimination.
When I first came to America as a refugee, the Ambassador General said to my father, "Go and find your kinsmen." So my father went in search of refugees like us, so we could feel a sense of belonging. To make the story short, in 2016, I made and found my kinsmen. By connecting with ARIA, they became my new tribe, my mentors, and my business associates. I bet the founding fathers of ARIA, when they first put this wonderful organization together, didn't know that they would make such a big difference to a refugee like me.
Hi, this is Jim Park. I'm here in Chinatown, San Francisco. This is a place where Alan Okamoto John Wong and I did a video about 7 or 8 years ago to really celebrate the 10-year anniversary of the organization. I'm very thankful for your work, our collective work, and the power of when we come together, the kinds of things that we can do and the impact we can have on people's lives throughout the country.
I feel like meeting other people with similar experiences and understanding their struggle has been really eye-opening for me, and it's given me more confidence, and it's allowed me to really stand up for myself and speak up.
I couldn't think of a better organization to really help advocate and lobby and progress more than this organization that's helping our community and helping promote accessible and sustainable home ownership and giving our community a voice.
For not only the Asian American population, immigrant population, but for people of all races. And that is really the foundation of ARIA.
ARIA can be that voice that community needs.
And that included to being the voice of the AAPI community.
Thank you, ARIA. We do have a voice.
It has now been 6 years since I've discovered ARIA, and let me tell you, ARIA has changed my life in the most profound way.
I wouldn't have these opportunities if I wasn't part of ARIA.
And I feel so fortunate to have had this opportunity to be part of this amazing organization.
I truly think that without ARIA, I would not be who I am today.
I battled cancer 6 years ago, and the outreach that I received from the ARIA members was invaluable to my healing. For those of you that are ARIA members watching, aloha from Hawaii to my ohana.
ARIA truly is family for me.
It really is truly like an extended family.
As a family.
Work family.
A second family.
Friends and family.
We are family.
And I look forward to seeing my ARIA family soon.
Hello, my ARIA family. This is James Wong, your national president for 2020. One of my goals as president this year was to archive our ARIA stories. 100 Voices is a collection of who ARIA members are and what this organization has done for us. This collection is just only the beginning of our individual voices that make up the ARIA story. We still need to hear from you. Please submit your story to www.areaa.org/100voices.
Okay, so that was actually my last slide, but you know, I do have some time left. I think we're 15 minutes before the hour, where I want to you know, answer your questions, and then also share my contact info, Vanessa Shields, vshields@aria.org. You know, before I get into the questions, just watching that video of ARIA, it's pretty emotional. You know, the Asian Real Estate Association of America, obviously we have a lot of Asian, you know, and Pacific Islander members, but we also have those who just want to help promote sustainable home ownership for APIs. You know, it's a very diverse membership base. Being a member doesn't just limit you to San Diego chapter. You have access and connections all throughout the country. So I encourage you, if you are interested or just want to see more about it, you can reach out to me. You can just check out our website, aria.org. You know, we have a prorated monthly amount due if you want to join today. Our annual renewals happen at the end of May for $99, but you don't have to be a member to access our State of Asia America report. But with membership, even during COVID, you will have a lot of incredible resources to take advantage of. And if you do have the time today to sit through this webinar and you're enjoying some of the information that I've shared, the resources are unparalleled if you join. So with that, let me check out these questions again. So first, what are Asian, let me just stop sharing. What are Asian Americans looking for in their home requirements that may be different than other cultures? Okay, so I love this question, and I really think that it is different depending on their background. I think everybody has their own unique experiences. I mean, I've heard some generalizations that I can share. Asian Americans definitely tend to skew towards more newer construction. You know, I think that there has been specific ideas of why older homes kind of didn't work, but I know that that's not the case for all. So, you know, I think that talking about the multi-generational households, Asian Americans are very family focused, and so inviting relatives to stay with them or live with them is definitely normal. And so having more space, more rooms is desirable. I know when Asian Americans are looking for homes. And I'm sure there are others that I can think of. And then a question that you had, I think same attendee, is, do you have a chart with the different ages entering the market, like Gen X, millennials, etc.? So we did not have this breakdown in this year's State of Asia America report, but we do have data on that, which I'm happy to share with you directly. You can email me at vshields@aria.org, and I can work on getting you that info after this presentation. But obviously with census data coming up, we will be able to kind of see a better breakdown of what those AAPI millennials are looking like when it comes to home ownership. Just during discussions that we've had with other, you know, the coalitions that we have within ARIA, that we have been hearing that there is an overwhelming amount of millennials in the rental market. And so, you know, we're interested to kind of hear more about what is either preventing them or allowing them to access homes as homeowners. So that's definitely something that we're thinking about and looking into here at ARIA. Just in terms of the chat, oh, Sandy Endelson, one just opened in Oceanside. I'm not sure if you're referring to a market, but that is very exciting, and I appreciate that comment. And if you do have information on that, I'd love to hear more about what you are referring to. And then you also mentioned there's a Vista Buddhist Temple and Japanese Cultural Center there in North County. So that's fantastic and great news. It's always great to kind of understand more and hear more about what we have available to us locally. So with that, I think if there are no other questions, I'm going to wrap up today's presentation. I appreciate all of your time, Shirley, especially you, for organizing this, inviting ARIA to participate. And I hope you all have a wonderful day. Thank you.